Janera places the last cardboard box on the floor. The dull thud echoes throughout the empty apartment. She wipes her forehead with the back of her hand and looks around. The rooms smell of old wood, floor cleaner, and silence. Cheap rent, just what she needs now. After all the past mistakes and debts, this is her fresh start. The only window in the living room faces the blank wall of the neighboring building, but a ray of sunlight still finds its way in, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. She sighs, feeling tired all over. The move took only one day because she didn't have much. A sofa, a bed, a laptop desk, and 5 boxes of clothes, books, and dishes. The most important thing is that she's here, safe, away from her old problems. Janera goes to the window and looks out the narrow space between the walls. The distant hum of the city can be heard somewhere below. But here, on the 5th floor, a strange isolation reigns. Her thoughts are interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind the wall. Heavy, masculine, leisurely. The footsteps move down the hallway and fade just beyond her door, into the apartment next door. For a second, there's complete silence. Then the click of the lock, and the door opens and closes, quietly, carefully. The neighbor has returned. Janera shrugs. She needs to unpack the boxes of kitchen utensils. She cuts the tape with scissors and takes out the cups, wrapping them in newspaper. The work is calming. Suddenly, a muffled sound comes through the wall. Short, abrupt, like a fist slamming on the table. Then a quiet, even voice. One. Saying something short and clear. Janera freezes, listening, but nothing else is heard. Silence fills the space again. She exhales slowly, as if afraid of the sound of her own breathing. Imagination, she whispers to herself, and continues unpacking. The next morning, Janera decides to throw out the accumulated cardboard. She ties it into a tight bundle and goes out into the hallway. It's long, dim, lit by a single dim light bulb at the other end. The walls are painted a dull beige, showing signs of wear. She's heading for the trash can when the door to the neighboring apartment opens. A man appears on the threshold. He freezes when he sees her. It's him, the neighbor, Kyungwon, tall, clearly over 6'9". He's dressed in simple black sweatpants and a dark t-shirt that clings to his powerful torso. Not the physique of a bodybuilder, but the physique of a man accustomed to real strength. Broad shoulders, a developed chest, strong arms. He's not fat, but pure, collected mass. He looks about her age, about 27. He has short, neatly trimmed black hair and attentive, imperturbable eyes. A gaze that instantly scans everything. Her, the stack of cardboard in her hands, the open door of her apartment. "Hello," says Janera, breaking the silence first, trying to smile. "I'm your new neighbor, Janera." He nods. Just once, briefly. His face expresses neither friendliness nor hostility. It's simply neutral. Stone. "Kyungwon," he says, his voice low and even, without intonation. He steps out into the hallway, closing the door behind him. His movements are smooth, economical. He passes her, heading for the elevator. Janera notices the muscles in his back flexing beneath the fabric of his t-shirt. He doesn't turn around. She quickly stuffs the cardboard into the closet and, suddenly overcome with the urge to not be alone in this hallway, follows him to the elevator. He's already pressed the button and is standing, staring straight at the metal doors. Janera stands next to him. The silence becomes thick, almost tangible. The elevator doors open with a dull clang. Kyungwon steps in first. Janera follows. The cabin is small and old, and his presence instantly fills the space. It smells of cleanliness, of some kind of men's shower gel with no distinct scent, and something else. Metal? No, she thinks it does. She presses the button for the first floor. The doors close. The elevator begins its downward motion with a gentle jolt. Silence. She looks down at her sneakers. He stands next to her, motionless, staring straight ahead at the door. She feels his warmth and strength. It's an unusual feeling. There's no threat in it, but there's absolute, unwavering control. He doesn't fidget, doesn't sigh, doesn't glance around. He simply is. And his silence presses on her eardrums louder than any noise. Janera steals a quick glance at him. His profile is sharp, his jaw tightly clenched. She notices a barely visible old scar on his left earlobe, a thin white line. His hands, folded before him, are large, with prominent knuckles. On the outside of one of them, a small, fresh bruise darkens. The elevator grinds to a halt on the 3rd floor. The doors don't open. The car freezes. Janera instinctively tenses. Kyungwon slowly turns his head and looks at the button panel. His gaze is calm. He reaches out and presses the first floor button again, firmly, with one finger. The mechanism clicks, and the elevator jerks downward. This action, so simple, seems to her to be filled with hidden meaning. He wasn't scared, not surprised. He simply removed a minor obstacle. That's probably how he does everything in life. The doors finally open on the first floor. He gestures her forward with a slight nod of his head. Janera steps out, feeling as if she's escaped a trap. She turns to say something, perhaps a thank you, though for what? But he's already walking away with long, confident strides, not looking back. He turns the corner and disappears from view, leaving her in the hallway with one question in her head, one that rings louder than all the others. Who is this man really? She approaches her door, sets the bags on the floor, and rummages through her bag for her keys. And then she notices the box. Small, made of thick brown cardboard, without any bright logos. It's right there at her threshold, leaning against the door. Janera frowns. She wasn't expecting a package. She leans over and looks at the label, and freezes. Address, her building, her floor. Apartment number 507. Recipient's name, Kim Kyungwon, her neighbor. The box arrived for him, but the courier apparently got the wrong door, seeing the new, unworn number on her apartment, number 5808, or simply got confused in the dim hallway. Janera straightens up, keys in hand. She looks at the next door. It's closed. She picks up the box. It's surprisingly light for its size, as if there's nothing inside, or just a few sheets of paper. It doesn't shake or rattle. She turns it over in her hands. There are no identifying marks, just an address label, neatly printed. The thought of taking the box to her place and delivering it tomorrow flashes through her mind, then fades. No, she doesn't want Kyungwon to think she's opened anything or held it back. After that silent pressure in the elevator, she doesn't want to give him any reason to distrust or question it. Better to deliver it now. She leaves the bags at her door, takes the box, and takes 2 steps to the neighboring apartment. Janera is about to knock with her knuckles, but notices that Kyungwon's door isn't completely closed. A narrow, dark gap, no more than a centimeter, separates her from what's inside. A cool breeze wafts through the crack, and a sound comes from within. Voices, quiet, speaking Korean. Janera doesn't understand a word, but the tone of the speech captivates her. This isn't a friendly conversation. They speak quickly, abruptly. Sometimes one voice, low, commanding, drowns out the others. It sounds like a discussion, like a report, or an order. She freezes, holding the box, her finger poised to knock. Her heart suddenly starts beating faster. She doesn't want to eavesdrop, but the door is ajar. She doesn't blame herself for being curious. It's natural. Then another sound is heard, a heavy, dull thud, as if something massive and soft had been placed on the table. Or, no, she doesn't want to finish the thought. A low voice utters something very clearly. There's a pause. Then the sound of footsteps approaching the door. Janera instinctively takes a step back, as if caught red-handed. She pretends to have just arrived and knocks loudly and quickly on the door 3 times. The conversations inside cease instantly. A complete, absolute silence descends, so swift and abrupt that it seems artificial. Janera feels a shiver run down her spine. The door doesn't open immediately. A few seconds pass. Then it slowly slides inward. Kyungwon appears in the doorway. He stands, filling the doorway. He's still wearing the same black sweatpants, but his t-shirt is now gray, without a pattern. His face is a mask of complete, icy calm. There's not a hint of surprise in his eyes at her visit, only a deep, wary attentiveness. He looks first at her, then at the box in her hands, then with a quick, barely noticeable movement, his eyes slide behind her, into the hallway, checking to see if she's alone. Yes, he says. His voice is even, but there's no trace of the warmth she heard that morning when he told her his name. Hello? Says Janera, her voice sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet hallway. This was delivered to my door. By mistake? For you! She holds out the box. Kyungwon doesn't take it right away. His gaze lingers on her face for a second, as if reading something. Then he extends his hand. His fingers brush the cardboard, and she notices that the knuckles of his right hand are a little redder than they were this morning. He takes the box easily, with one hand, judging its weight. Thank you, he says. The word is polite, but spoken in a tone that leaves no room for further conversation. It's a statement, not gratitude. At that moment, a flicker of movement appears from the depths of the apartment behind him. Kyungwon, without turning around, shifts slightly to the right, as if by accident, but it's enough to completely block her view of the apartment. Now she sees only him and the dark rectangle of the door. Didn't they bring anything else? He asks. Janera answers honestly. Just this. He nods. Briefly, just like this morning. Okay, good night. He doesn't slam the door. He begins to close it slowly, controlling every inch of movement, still looking at her. The door clicks into place with a soft click. Janera hears the key turn in the lock. One clear turn. The sound of armor. Images whirl in her head. His stony face in the doorway, his red knuckles, the stranger's figure glimpsed in the distance, the sound of a key turning. Her bedroom shares a wall with his apartment. It's quiet there now. A deep, impenetrable silence, as if no one lives behind the wall, but an empty space. It's strange. In her previous apartments, there were always some nighttime sounds from the neighbors. The television, laughter, water in the pipes. Here, nothing. She's almost falling asleep when suddenly she's awakened by sounds in the hallway. Not just footsteps, several pairs of shoes. Heavy, confident, yet surprisingly quiet for their weight. They approach the elevator. They stop. Janera lies there, holding her breath, staring at the ceiling. The doorbell rings quietly, politely, not hers. The next door. One short beep. Almost immediately, the click of the lock is heard. The door opens. No greetings, no questions. Just subdued whispers, several low voices uttering a word or two, then the sound of the door closing. And silence again. A minute passes, then another. Janera doesn't move. Then another ring, another, and again the same routine. Opening, quiet voices, closing. Over the next half hour, 3 different groups of people arrive at Kyungwon's door. No one speaks loudly. No one lingers more than 30 seconds. Everything happens with a frightening, rehearsed precision, like the changing of the guard or the delivery of important dispatches. It's tense, thick, as if filled with unspoken words and invisible activity behind the thin wall. Who are these people? What are they bringing or taking away in the dead of night? She quietly gets up and creeps to her front door. She presses her ear to the cold wood. Nothing. She peers through the peephole. The hallway is empty, lit by a dim yellow light. Kyungwon's door looks monolithic, like the door to a bank vault. The morning brings no clarity. Janera leaves the apartment, heading to a job interview. The first thing she sees is the space in front of Kyungwon's door. It's perfectly clean. Not a speck of dust, not a speck of dirt. The line where his half of the hallway ends and the other half begins seems to be drawn with a ruler. Opposite, by her door, and the doors of the other apartments, there's small debris, shoe prints, and dust. His linoleum is polished to a shine. The door itself is also immaculate. No scratches, no scuffs on the handle, no traces of stickers or ads. Just a smooth, dark, stain-resistant surface. During the day, when she returns home, she begins to notice details again. The trash can on his side of the hallway is always empty, even if her bag is already full. It's never worth the stinking bags. When she encounters other residents, an elderly woman from the floor above, a student from the apartment across the hall, they make noise, talk, and cough. From Kyungwon's apartment, there's never a sound of television, music, or even toilet flushing. It's as if no one lives there, only occasionally showing up for important business. That evening, while preparing dinner, she listens again. Silence. Absolute. She remembers the sound she heard that first night. A thud, like a body falling, and the loud sound of breaking glass, which then faded so quickly. She remembers the fresh bruise on his hand, which later turned to redness on his knuckles. She places her spoon on the table and sits down, looking at her modest meal. Simple questions haunt her. What kind of family business could require late-night visits from serious men? Why is the apartment always immaculately tidy and quiet, like a military base? Why does a man who looks like a sports instructor or a bodyguard develop bruises on his arms and receive anonymous, lightweight packages? Janera pushes her plate away. Her appetite is gone. The quiet neighbor, too quiet. And this silence now seems not calm, but ominous. She doesn't know what exactly lurks behind his door, but she's increasingly convinced that the low price of her apartment may have a hidden reason. And that reason lives next door, behind the thin wall she's now afraid to knock on, lest she hear that same oppressive silence in response. Kyungwon's apartment continues for 2 days. Janera almost begins to think that all her suspicions are a figment of the imagination of someone tired from moving. She goes to job interviews, settles in, and the image of her neighbor fades into the background. But on the third night, everything changes. Janera is already asleep. A deep, heavy sleep after a long day. It's not voices or footsteps that wake her. It's the noise that wakes her. The sound comes from behind the wall, from Kyungwon's apartment. It's sharp, loud, and absolutely unmistakable. It's the sound of breaking glass. Not just one glass, but something large. Maybe a mirror, a glass tabletop, or a window. The sound of shattering shards, a crunch, dry and aggressive. Janera instantly sat up in bed, her heart pounding in her throat. Her ears rang from the sudden silence that followed. Then, nothing. No screams, no fuss, no swearing, not even a surprised exclamation. Just a roar and an instant, absolute silence. This silence is more terrifying than the sound itself. It means that either no one was there, or that those who were there are so unsurprised and in control of the situation that they don't even make a sound. She listens, frozen, trying not to breathe. A minute passes. 2. The silence becomes unbearable. She gets up, throws on a robe, and creeps to the wall dividing the living rooms. She presses her palm to the cold wallpaper. Not a vibration, not a rustle. Then, after 5 long minutes, a new sound comes. Not from the apartment, but from the hallway. The click of his lock. The door opens and closes. Heavy but quiet footsteps retreat toward the elevator. One person, most likely Kyungwon. He comes out at night, after something in his apartment has been smashed to pieces. Janera steps away from the wall. She feels uneasy. She goes to her bedroom window, pulls back the curtain, and peers into the narrow gap of the courtyard. A minute later, she sees him. Kyungwon is coming out of the entrance hall. He is alone. He is wearing a dark jacket. He doesn't run, doesn't look back. He walks with a calm, measured stride toward a black car parked in the distance, which wasn't there before. He opens the trunk and takes out an oblong bundle, like a large rug or thick fabric. He closes the trunk. He carries the bundle easily, although it looks heavy. He returns to the entrance hall and disappears. Janera lets go of the curtain. She doesn't want to look anymore. She goes back to bed, but sleep won't come. She lies there, staring at the ceiling, and one thought swirls through her head. What did he wrap in that cloth? And why? After all that noise, did he look like he'd just gone out to take out the trash? The morning is sunny and ordinary. The events of the night seem like a dream until Janera goes out into the hallway at 10 o'clock to throw out the bag. Kyungwon's door opens just then. He steps out. He's wearing a crisp dark t-shirt and sweatpants. He looks perfectly normal, rested, focused. In his hands is a large, tightly packed black plastic garbage bag. The bag is heavy, judging by the way the muscles in his forearm tensed as he grasped it. The contents are clearly not just paper or empty boxes. The bag is uneven, with angular protrusions. He notices her and nods with the same neutral expression he always has. Then he turns and walks back toward his apartment. He doesn't look at her anymore. He steps inside and closes the door. Everything is as usual. Janera stands, clutching her half-empty bag of banana peels and empty packages. She looks at the trash can door. She desperately wants to go over, open it, and peer into that black bag. But she doesn't dare. It could peek out at any moment. She throws out her trash and quickly returns to the apartment. The image of that bag haunts her. What's in it? Pieces of what broke during the night? Something else? She remembers the package from the trunk. Squeaky clean. It removes any traces. Quickly and efficiently. Her neighbor isn't just quiet. He's neat, to a frightening degree. That afternoon, Janera decides to do some more substantial shopping. She returns from the supermarket laden with 2 huge bags. One contains canned goods, bags of cereal, and bottles of oil. Janera sighs in exasperation. What a wonderful way to start the day. She squats down, trying to gather everything back into the torn bag. But it's too late to save. She hears footsteps. Quick, light. Someone is coming down the stairs. Kyungwon appears on the landing. He must have walked from the top floor. He stops, taking in the scene. A confused Janera. Groceries scattered across the elevator floor. He doesn't say a word. He approaches and also squats down. His movements are quick and efficient. He takes the torn bag, quickly crumples it, and stuffs it into his jacket pocket. Then he takes off the spacious fabric backpack he was carrying. He opens it. It's almost empty inside, containing only a bottle of water and a rolled-up sweater. "Put it here," he says simply, holding the backpack open. Janera, slightly stunned, begins packing away the cans and remaining packets. He helps, scooping up the scattered pasta by the handful and tossing it into the empty section of the backpack. He doesn't wince or sigh. He just gets on with it. 30 seconds later, The entire scattered cargo is packed into his backpack. The bottle of oil, miraculously unbroken, sits at his feet. He stands up, slings the now heavy backpack over one shoulder, and takes the bottle of oil in his hand. Then, with his free hand, he lifts Janera's second, undamaged package from the bottom of the elevator. "Your floor?" he asks, looking at her. Janera squeezes out. He nods and presses the button for the 5th floor. The elevator starts moving. They ride in silence. But this silence is different now. It's not oppressive, like the first time. It's businesslike. He helped solve a minor everyday problem, and that's all. The elevator arrives at the 5th floor. Kyungwon gets off first, and without asking, heads for her door. Janera hurries after him, getting her keys. "Thank you," she says sincerely, opening the door. "You really helped me out. I didn't think the bag would break." "It happens," he says, placing her entire bag and the bottle of oil on the floor by the entrance. Then he takes off his backpack and carefully unloads her groceries onto the floor nearby, being careful not to damage the packaging. Janera looks at him. In the daylight from her hallway, she notices details that had eluded her before. He really is in excellent physical condition, but there are faint, barely noticeable shadows under his eyes, as if from lack of sleep. His hands, so nimble and strong, are covered with small, old scars. Scratches, white lines on his dark skin. Nothing major, but there are many of them. "Should you take this to the kitchen?" he asks, finishing unloading. No, I'll do it myself, thank you again," says Janera. She feels awkward about his help. "Sorry to bother you." "Don't worry," he says. And for the first time, his lips seem to move a millimeter, in a semblance of something that isn't a smile, but isn't the usual neutral line either. It's just a fleeting change. It's always like that with groceries. "Better take a bag." "Yes, lesson learned," she smiles in response, feeling unexpected relief. He looks at her for a second, his gaze softening for a split second. In that moment, he doesn't seem mysterious or intimidating. He looks like just a neighbor who helped her carry her bags. A young man, tired, but polite. "Stronger garbage bags, too," he suddenly says in a completely calm, matter-of-fact tone. "The cheap ones tear. Then there's cleanup." He says this, and there's no ambiguity in his eyes. But Janera immediately thinks of the heavy black bag he carried out that morning. Sturdy, without a single hole. She suppresses a shudder. "Thanks for the advice," she says. He nods. "Goodbye." He turns and walks toward his door. Janera carries the groceries into the apartment and closes the door. She leans her back against it. This brief conversation had confused her. It seemed almost ordinary. Almost. But even in this ordinariness, in the advice about garbage bags, there was a hidden, practical, even harsh experience. He knows about durable bags not from advertising. The next day, an event occurs in the building that temporarily distracts everyone, including Janera, from the mystery of Gyeongwon. An elderly man from the 3rd floor, Mr. Gordon, has lost his dog, a small, noisy fox terrier named Button. Mr. Gordon is in a panic. He goes from one courtyard to another, calling and asking neighbors. The dog seems to have vanished. Several residents gather in the 1st floor hallway. Mr. Gordon, almost in tears, explains that he let Button out into the courtyard for 5 minutes before bed, as always, but he never returned. Janera is there too, offering to help with the search. There's a commotion, chatter, and useless speculation. Someone says they saw a suspicious car. Someone else says they heard barking in the night. Nothing concrete. Everyone's talking at once, and a chaotic bustle reigns. And then Kyungwon comes down into the hall. He was apparently about to leave. He pauses, observing the scene for a second. His gaze shifts from the agitated Mr. Gordon to the group of chattering neighbors. A slight, barely perceptible expression of impatience appears on his face. He dislikes disorder and inefficiency. Kyungwon doesn't raise his voice. He takes a step forward to be seen better and speaks clearly, cutting through the general hubbub. "That's it." His voice isn't loud, but it has a metallic, commanding tone that makes everyone stop talking and turn around. They all look at him. "When was the last time you saw him?" he asks Mr. Gordon, looking directly at him. His tone is not sympathetic, but businesslike. "Yesterday, at 11 o'clock in the evening, in the yard," sobs Mr. Gordon. "Collar chip? Collar, no chip. Does everyone have a photo?" People look at each other helplessly. Kyungwon sighs slightly. "Right now. You!" He points a finger at the student from the apartment across from Janera. "Go up and print out 20 flyers with photos of the dog." The dog might have gotten scared and gone into hiding. He distributes tasks so quickly and confidently that no one even thinks to argue. People simply nod and begin to disperse, already knowing what to do. He turns to Mr. Gordon. You stay here in case she comes back on her own, or calls. Give me your number. Genera, stunned, watched as he transformed the chaotic crowd into an organized search party in seconds. He didn't ask, he gave orders, and the people obeyed. There was no malice or arrogance in his manner, only a cold, urgent efficiency. This is the way of people accustomed to leading and taking responsibility in crisis situations. The search yielded results faster than anyone expected. The man Kyungwon sent to the garages found Button 20 minutes later. The dog was stuck in a half-disassembled toolbox in the farthest, darkest corner of the utility room. He wasn't barking, but whining quietly in fear. A cheerful Mr. Gordon takes his pet. Janera returns to the yard, feeling a slight sense of relief at the happy ending. She sees Kyungwon standing off to the side, at the edge of the yard, near the back fence. Next to him are two guys Janera hasn't seen in the house before. They're dressed in tracksuits and look cheeky. One of them is gesturing animatedly. Kyungwon listens. His back is straight, his arms are at his sides. He doesn't move. Then he says something short, just one sentence. His voice doesn't carry, but Janera sees both boys immediately fall silent. Their confident postures shift. They seem to shrink. Kyungwon takes a step forward. It's not threatening, but the space between them suddenly closes. He speaks again, low, quiet, but very clearly. He doesn't shout. He doesn't even raise his voice, but his expression changes. The last hint of ordinariness disappears. His eyes become flat, cold, like two pieces of dark glass. There's no anger in them. There's something far more frightening, an absolute, indifferent confidence in his own power. One of the boys tries to say something in response, stumbling. Kyungwon doesn't let him finish. He utters another sentence, very briefly. At the same time, he makes a slight, almost imperceptible movement with his hand. Not a punch, but simply a quick finger point toward the gate. The movement is reminiscent of a commander sending an errant soldier off to the wrong place. The boys don't argue. They quickly, almost running, walk off in the indicated direction. Without looking back, Kyungwon stands for another second, watching them go. Then he slowly turns. His gaze meets Janera's, who had been watching the entire scene from around the corner of the entrance. For a few more seconds, that same icy, distant expression remains on his face. He looks at her, and there's no embarrassment or explanation in his eyes. He simply registers the fact. She saw. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, the expression softened. He became the neighbor again, who had helped carry the bags. He gave her a brief, meaningless nod and headed toward the entrance, passing her by. He didn't say a word, but now Janera knows. The ordinariness she saw this morning is only a thin layer. Beneath it lies something else. The man who, with just a glance and a quiet word, had just made two strong men flee. The man who doesn't simply organize the search. He gives orders, and the people follow them, without question, and she still doesn't know who he really is. But she now knows exactly what he's not. He's not an ordinary neighbor. A week passes. Janera has almost gotten used to the strange rhythm of the house. Kyungwon rarely shows up, but when he does, his presence is palpable. She tries not to think about what she saw in the yard. One evening, while she's watching a TV show on her laptop, there's a loud, insistent knock on the door. It's not a doorbell, but a knock, heavy, like a fist. Janera flinches. She's not expecting guests. The knocking is repeated, even louder. "Open up!" comes a hoarse male voice from behind the door. Janera's heart is pounding. She slowly approaches the door and peers through the peephole. A large man, in a wrinkled jacket, stands in the hallway. His face is red and unshaven. He looks irritated. "Open up, Carter! I know I'm home!" he shouts, knocking again. Janera realizes he's not using her last name. The last name on the lease is different, that of the previous tenant. It's a mistake. She tries to speak firmly and says through the door, "You're mistaken. Janera lives here. Carter doesn't live here anymore." "He doesn't live there? And who do you think should pay for it?" The man leans his shoulder against the door. The wood gives slightly. "Open up. Let's talk peacefully. Or call the police. Let's see what they say about the debts." He bangs on the door again. Janera jumps back, pressing herself against the hallway wall. Panic rises in her throat. She doesn't know what to do. Call the police? That could take time. And this man looks like he could kick the door down. And then the door to Kyungwon's apartment opens. There's no bang, no creak. It just slides silently open. Kyungwon appears in the doorway. He's wearing casual clothes, plain dark pants and a t-shirt. He's barefoot. There's no anger or irritation on his face, only a cold, focused emptiness. He takes 2 steps into the hallway, putting himself between the man and Janera's door. The debt collector turns around when he sees him. His confidence fades slightly. Kyungwon doesn't say a word. He just stares. His gaze moves over the man, slowly, appraisingly, as if studying an inanimate object. He doesn't blink. "What's wrong with you?" the debt collector says hoarsely, trying to regain his composure. "None of your business." Kyungwon doesn't respond. He takes another step forward, closing the distance to a minimum. He doesn't loom, doesn't swing. He simply stands close, very close. His physical presence, his calm, ready posture, speaks for itself. The man looks at him, then at Janera's door, then back at Kyungwon. He sees something in those dark eyes that makes him back away. Not from fear, but from a sudden animalistic caution. He realizes he's gotten himself into the wrong situation here. "Okay," he mutters, walking toward the elevator. I'll check the information. But this isn't the end of it. Kyungwon continues to stare at him silently as he pokes the elevator button. The doors open. The man steps inside and disappears. The corridor is empty again. Only then does Kyungwon turn to Janera's door. He looks through the peephole, knowing she's there. "He's gone," he says in his usual even voice. Janera opens the door. Her hands are shaking. "Thank you," she says, her voice breaking. I don't even know who that was." "Debts from previous tenants," Kyungwon says simply. "It happens in cheap houses. It won't be there anymore." He says this with such confidence, as if he's already given the relevant orders. Janera nods, unsure what to say. She's still in shock. "Would you like some tea?" she blurts out. She feels obligated to offer something after his help. "As a token of gratitude." Kyungwon looks at her. He seems to hesitate for a second. His gaze glides down the hallway, listening. "Just a minute," he finally says. He enters her apartment. He doesn't look around, doesn't take in the surroundings. He goes straight to the kitchen and sits down on a chair by the table, his back to the wall, facing the kitchen entrance and the window. His posture is relaxed but composed. Janera notices how his eyes periodically move very quickly to the window, the door, the air vent. He's not just sitting, he's scanning the space. He's listening to every sound in the house, the creaking of the elevator, the footsteps upstairs, the hum of the plumbing. This isn't paranoia. Kyungwon answers curtly, raising the cup to his lips. He doesn't drink it right away, but inhales the steam, still looking over the rim of the cup toward the hallway. They knock. Nothing more. They drink tea in silence. Janera feels like she should say something to ease the tension, but her mind is blank. The only thing swirling around in her head is the question that has been bothering her since the first day. She puts down her cup. "Kyungwon," she begins, not looking at him. "I don't mean to seem intrusive, and I'm very grateful for the help, both with the dog and now. But," she takes a breath, "what are you doing?" She looks up at him. He doesn't look surprised. He slowly places his cup on the table. The sound of porcelain on wood seems very loud. He looks at her for a few seconds. His face is unreadable. Then he leans back in his chair, but his back remains straight. "I run a business," he says calmly. "A family business." He pauses, choosing his words. "It's import and distribution. Consumer goods." He says this evenly, as if reading a boring brochure. "We have our own territory, our own contracts. Sometimes there are disputes with competitors, sometimes with defaulters, like today." He nods toward the corridor. "My job is to make sure disputes are resolved quickly and correctly, that the rules are followed." Janera listens. The words import and distribution sound like a rehearsed neutral phrase, but the words territory, disputes, and rules ring true. "Is it dangerous?" she asks, already knowing the answer. He looks straight at her. "For those who break the rules, yes. For those who live quietly and don't interfere, no." He pauses briefly. "You live quietly, Janera." It's a statement, a warning, and a strange promise all at once. He's saying that if she stays out of his way, his world won't touch her. And that story with the dog, those 2 guys? She couldn't help but ask. That subtle, not smile, tugged at his lips again. Petty thieves. They like to get their hands on other people's garages. They've been told that it's not welcome in this area. Now they know. He says explained, in the same tone as if he were saying laid the foundation. And Janira remembers how those guys ran away. He drains his tea and stands up. "Thank you for the tea. And remember, if that guy shows up again, Don't open the door. Just tell him I'm here. He won't be coming again. He heads for the exit. At the door, he turns around. And fix the lock. This one's too weak. Put in an extra chain. He leaves and closes the door behind him. Janera remains sitting at the kitchen table, staring at 2 empty cups. He didn't tell her the whole truth. He didn't even come close to her. But he said enough for all the pieces of the puzzle to fall into place in her head. Quiet neighbor, family business, territory, disputes, rules. She no longer doubted it. Her quiet neighbor was more than just a businessman. He was the one who set the rules in his world. And by all accounts, he did it very effectively. And now, after their tea and this conversation, she had unwittingly become part of this picture. He had protected her, and that meant she was within his sphere of control. The only question now was what that meant to her. 2 days after their conversation over tea, Janera goes down to the basement, where the house's laundry room is located. The room, with 2 washers and a dryer, is always empty by midday. Today, it's empty too. She loads her clothes into one of the machines, adds detergent, and turns it on. While the machine is filling with water, she notices a small object on the narrow wooden bench next to the dryer, a dark blue leather notebook. It looks expensive, and doesn't look like something someone would accidentally leave there. Janera comes closer. She looks around. No one is there. The car hums loudly. She picks up the notebook. The leather is soft, pleasant to the touch. It is unbuttoned. She shouldn't do this. She knows. After her conversation with Kyungwon, she knows for sure that curiosity is a bad idea, but her hand seems to act on its own. She opens the cover. On the first page, in neat, almost printed handwriting, it says, K.K. Kim Kyungwon. Janera's heart skips a beat. She quickly scrolls further. The pages are filled with numbers. These aren't simple shopping lists. They're columns, tables, totals, very large sums in dollars and won. Next to the numbers are initials, short marks, D7, SV Club, T. Postavka. Simple diagrams are drawn in the corners of some pages, squares connected by arrows, like floor plans or directions. A map of some other hidden world that exists parallel to her ordinary life. A world where large sums are counted, where there are dots on calendars and charts, and where a black dot can mean something serious. She hears footsteps on the stairs leading to the basement. Quick, light, familiar. She instinctively presses herself against the wall, behind the machine. The footsteps approach the laundry room door. She quickly folds the paper back, closes the notebook, and places it exactly in the same spot on the bench. Then she jumps back to her washing machine, pretending to check the settings. Her hands are shaking. Kyungwon enters. He's wearing a light black windbreaker, his expression focused. He sees her immediately. His gaze glides over her, then around the room, stopping at the notebook on the bench. There's no flash of panic or anger in his eyes, only a momentary sharp wariness, which is immediately replaced by his usual neutrality. Janera, he says in an even voice. Hello, she replies, her voice hoarse. I'm doing laundry. He nods and approaches the bench. He picks up the notebook without looking at it and places it in the inside pocket of his windbreaker. The movement is casual, as if he were simply picking up his keys. Didn't you see anything? He asks, looking straight at her. The question is simple, but it chills the blood. He's not asking about the notebook. He's asking about her curiosity. Did you see it? No, she lies, shaking her head. I just got here. He looks at her for another second. He doesn't believe it. Or does he? It's impossible to tell with him. Okay, he says. We shouldn't linger here too long. The basement isn't the safest place at night. He turns and leaves as quickly as he arrived. She realizes she's on thin ice. She doesn't want trouble, but now she knows something she shouldn't have. The next day, when she returns home, he's waiting for her. He's standing in the hallway, leaning against the wall next to her door, as if he's just getting some air. But his posture suggests he was waiting specifically for her. Janera, he says when she approaches. Kyungwon. She stops, clutching her bag. He straightens up. He has nothing in his hands. We need to talk. Shall we go in? She nods and opens the door. They find themselves in the kitchen again. He sits down on the same chair. She doesn't offer tea. She takes that same blue notebook out of her bag. She found it that morning, neatly placed on top of her mailbox below. No note, nothing, just a notebook. She took it, realizing it wasn't just a forgotten item. It was a test, or a proposal. It looked serious. He nods, as if he'd expected just that. Curiosity, he says slowly, is a dangerous thing, Janera. It leads people into places from which there's no easy exit. It makes them see things they'd rather not see. It's not a threat. It's a statement of fact, said with such certainty that a chill runs down her spine. I didn't mean to see anything, she says. It was an accident. Accidents, he says, often become the beginning. Now you know what you know. And I know that you know. This creates a situation. He places his palm on the notebook. There are two ways. First, I can guarantee that your coincidence will remain just that. A coincidence. You live quietly. I do my work. Our worlds do not intersect. But that requires complete oblivion. You have never seen this notebook. You have never seen anything unusual. You are simply neighbors. And the second one? She asks, already knowing the first path is closed to her. She can no longer simply forget. He leans back in his chair. The second way is to use what you've seen. Do you have an education? Economics? Accounting? She nods, surprised. I studied to be a financial analyst, but I didn't finish my studies. I worked as a clerk. That's enough, he says. My business has a lot of paperwork, receipts, expenses, all this digital stuff. Everything's legal on paper, but I need someone to neatly compile it into tables, simple accounting, so that everything is clean and understandable. For an external auditor, for example. He pauses, looking at her. It's not difficult. No more dangerous than working in any office. Just numbers. I pay well, twice what you'd get for a similar position downtown, in cash. And you don't have to travel anywhere. Work from home. Janera listens, her mind racing. Is this a trap or an opportunity? The money he offers will solve all her current problems. Rent, debts, the chance to finally breathe freely. But the price? Why me? She asks. You can hire anyone you like. Because you're here, he says simply. Because you already know the context. And because you're not stupid. And you're careful. You didn't open the door to that debt collector. You returned the notebook. He looks at her directly. And I need someone who won't be noticed. A neighbor. No one will think to connect you to me unless you're not visible yourself. He says this as if it were a lucrative condition. But Janera hears the subtext. If she agrees, she will become part of his world. Invisible, but part nonetheless. Janera looks at the notepad under his palm. She thinks about the numbers she saw. They frighten her. But she also thinks about her nearly empty bank account, her overdue phone bills, how she counts every penny at the store. She thinks about his words. Just numbers. Legally on paper. She thinks about his protection. About how he stood between her and the debt collector. How he made him leave with just a glance. In this world, in this cheap house with thin walls, there's something appealing about such protection, even if it comes from such a dark source. She's afraid. But the fear of poverty, of instability, of the constant struggle alone, proves stronger than the fear of the mysterious neighbor and his family business. She slowly raises her head and meets his gaze. Okay, she says, her voice quiet but clear. I agree. There's no smile or relief on his face. He simply nods as if he's taken note. Okay. Tomorrow morning, I'll bring you the first set of documents and a list of instructions. It's simple. If anything's unclear, ask. But don't tell anyone. Not your friends, not your family. That's the condition. I understand, she says. He stands up and takes the notebook from the table. Then see you tomorrow, Janera. And welcome to the team. He leaves, leaving her sitting at the kitchen table. She looks at her hands. They're still shaking, but now not just from fear, from excitement too. From the realization that she's just crossed the line separating her old, unsuccessful life from something new, unknown, and potentially dangerous. But she's crossed the line. And as he said, there's no turning back. The next morning, as promised, Kyungwon brings a folder, thick, gray, unmarked. He places it on the kitchen table in Janera's apartment. This is everything for the last quarter, he says in his usual businesslike tone. It needs to be categorized. Procurement, logistics, rent, employee benefits. All receipts and invoices are attached. Create a separate table for each object and a summary table. Any questions? Janira shakes her head. She opens the folder. Inside are neat stacks of documents. Invoices from shipping companies, leases for warehouse space on the outskirts of the city, receipts for office equipment, payroll slips with lists of names. Everything looks dry, boring, legal. But later in the evening, while sorting through the stack marked receipts, she stumbles upon a discrepancy. These are copies of bank statements. Payments arrive from the same account, in the name of some foreign company, several times a month. The amounts are enormous, tens of times greater than all other transactions. The purpose of the payments is vague. Consulting services, license royalties. There are no contracts in the documents explaining these amounts. They just exist. Regular, like clockwork. She sets the stack aside and continues. But now her eyes search for something similar. And she finds it. Under expenses, there are similarly gigantic transfers, but these are to companies with meaningless names. And again, there are no supporting documents. She leans back in her chair. The room feels stuffy. They simply float through the documents like dark spots. This isn't accounting. This is disguise. Enormous sums come in, hide among rent and driver salaries, and disappear into thin air. She closes the laptop. She needs to talk to him. Now. She goes to his door and knocks. No longer feeling the same fear, only growing irritation. He opens it almost immediately. He's wearing a business shirt and talking on the phone in Korean. Upon seeing her, he quickly ends the call. Janera, is the report ready? No, we need to talk. He studies her face and lets her in. His apartment amazes her. She expected something gloomy and empty, but here it's bright, minimalist, and very clean. High-quality furniture, modern appliances, not a single unnecessary item. What happened? He asks, pointing her to the sofa. He remains standing. Numbers, she says bluntly, without sitting down. Income and expenses. These huge sums. No contracts, no explanations. This isn't accounting. She expects him to get angry, but he only nods slowly. I told you. Simple accounting. It's not easy. Her voice rises. You said legal. This doesn't look legal. I don't want to be part of anything shady. He looks at her, and there is no malice or justification in his eyes. Only weariness. Okay, he says quietly. You want the truth? Not the version for the neighbors? Yes. He walks across the room, stops at a large window, and looks out into the yard. Import and distribution, he begins. That's true. We import goods. We distribute them to outlets, but not consumer goods. He turns to her. Gaming equipment, gambling machines, or shall we say, parts for them. It's a gray area, a very profitable one. Janera listens, frozen. We have territory, several districts. They bring in a lot of income. A lot. Those figures you saw, that's it. But this business attracts attention. The attention of competitors who want a piece of the action. The attention of petty thieves. The attention of former partners who think they can avoid paying. He pauses. My job is to mediate these disputes, to ensure that the money flows, that the rules are followed by everyone. By what methods? Janera asks in a whisper, already knowing the answer. Anything necessary, he says without hesitation. His voice hardens. I don't deal in illegal substances. I don't bother people who don't interfere with my business. But if someone breaks a contract, steals, or claims someone else's property, then yes. Then there are arguments, sometimes noisy ones, like that night. He's referring to the smashing of glass. But my rules are strict and the same for everyone. That's what earns me respect. It keeps things in order. He comes closer. Your job is to keep track of the legal part, the stuff that's visible to everyone. Warehouse rent, salaries, transportation. These huge sums just need to be placed correctly among all of it, so that the overall picture looks normal. You're not doing anything illegal. You're working with numbers. It's just that the context of these numbers is different. Janera feels the ground slipping from under her feet. He confessed. He runs the organization, and he dragged her in. You lied to me, she says. I left out the details, he corrects, so as not to scare you. Now you know everything. The choice is yours. You can leave. Forget everything you saw. I'll pay you back for these days. And we're just neighbors. He looks at her directly. But if you stay, the money will be very good. And my protection, too. Like with that debt collector. Only now it's official. You're part of the structure. Fear twists her stomach. She should say no. She should run out of here. But she remembers the debt collector, remembers the empty account, remembers his confidence, and remembers him saying, You're not doing anything illegal. Maybe it's self-delusion, but her hands are already in this. She's seen too much already. Leaving now doesn't mean she'll be safe. It means she'll become a stranger who knows something. She looks at the floor, then up at him. I'm staying. He nods, unsmiling. Okay, get back to work. Don't touch the amounts. Just deposit them. The context is my business. She returns to herself. The fear doesn't go away. It sits inside her like a cold stone. She's in business. For real. She types out numbers, these enormous sums, and her fingers tremble. She's part of the machine, and she has no illusions. A few days later, new faces appear in the courtyard. Not his people. His people are recognizable. They're smart, dressed in neutral, high-quality clothes, and quiet. These new ones are different. They wear brightly colored tracksuits, talk loudly, and laugh. They look at the windows, at the residents, appraisingly. Their cars park for long periods at the gate. Tension hangs in the air. Janera sees Kyungwon exit the building and walk past them. He doesn't look their way. They fall silent, watching him with their eyes. He gets into his car and drives away. As soon as he's gone, their laughter grows even louder. That same evening, an error occurs. Janera is getting ready for bed. The apartment is quiet. And suddenly, there are heavy footsteps in the hallway. More than one person. Loud voices, an argument. They stop right at her door. Not his, hers. "Here, or what?" A hoarse voice. 507, they said. "It's this one." A second voice. "Knock." A loud, aggressive fist bangs on her door. Janera freezes in the middle of the living room, her heart pounding. "Hey, open up! We need to talk!" They shout from behind the door. They're confused. They're in the wrong apartment. They're looking for Kyungwon, but they're knocking on her door. "Don't open it," she whispers to herself, retreating to the wall, but the knocking gets louder. Now they're kicking. "Open up! We know you're home!" The door, old and not very sturdy, is knocked down with the third blow of a shoulder. The wooden frame breaks with a crash. Two men appear in the doorway. Large men with angry faces. They see her. Their confusion lasts a second. "Who are you? Where's the Korean?" The first one growls, stepping inside. Janera tries to retreat to the bedroom, but her path is blocked. The second one is blocking the kitchen. "I don't know," she mutters in panic. "You're lying!" The first one grabs her hand. His fingers dig painfully into her skin. He shakes her. "Where is he?" She tries to break free, pushing him in the chest with her free hand. He growls and pushes her away with force. Janera flies backward, her back and the back of her head colliding with the edge of the doorframe with a loud thud. Her vision darkens, and her ears ring with pain. She falls to the floor, onto the hallway rug. Her head is pounding, and a searing pain throbs in the back of her skull. "Where's the neighbor?" The second one looms over her, his face blurry. At that moment, a sound comes from the hallway. A low, animalistic growl, the sound of pure rage. It all happens in seconds. A figure bursts into the hallway. It's Kyungwon. But this isn't the calm, cold man. His face is distorted with anger. His eyes are burning. He moves with inhuman speed. The first attacker is just beginning to turn around. Kyungwon strikes with brutal efficiency. The blow is swift and precise, and the man falls to his knees, clutching his throat. The second man swings. Kyungwon catches his arm, twists it, and the second man hits the wall with a dull thud and goes limp. Silence falls in the hallway, broken only by the first one's wheezing and Kyungwon's heavy breathing. She stares at him, her eyes wide, trembling. She tries to get up, but the pain in the back of her head makes her nauseous. She shakes her head. At that moment, two of his men enter the door, or rather, the doorway. A minute later, the apartment is quiet again, save for Janera's heavy breathing and the creak of the broken door. Kyungwon looks at Janera carefully. He gently runs his fingers over the back of her head. She winces. "A lump, a big one. Any dizziness?" "A little," she breathes out. He throws it down, gets up, and in a few minutes undoes some practical work. He brings ice from her bathroom, wrapped in a towel. He hands it to her. Then he goes to the broken door, and with forceful movements, pushes it back into place, propping it up with a chair. His face is focused. The previous absolute calm is gone. His jaw is tense. He looks agitated. "They got the wrong door," he says quietly, returning to her. "They were looking for me. It's my fault. My responsibility." He doesn't say sorry. He states a fact. But there's a heaviness in his voice. "Your door," Janera whispers, pressing the ice to her head. "There'll be a new one in the morning. And a lock. And an alarm," he says, and it sounds like a death sentence. "One of my men will be on duty downstairs tonight. No one else will come near this floor." She simply nods. The shock begins to recede, and fear slowly takes its place. Real fear, not from guesswork, but from the fact. Her door was kicked down. She was pushed, because of him. "I'm scared," she says out loud, her voice shaking. He looks at her. His gaze softens a little. "I know. You have every right. But listen to me. This will not happen again. Never." They crossed a line. They came into a house. They touched an innocent person. This is not just an argument anymore. This is personal. And I will end it. He says this with such quiet, concentrated intensity that the words seem carved from stone. Gennara believes him. He spends the entire night in her apartment. He sits in a chair in the living room, his back to the window, his face toward the damaged door. He's motionless. He speaks on the phone once, in short sentences in Korean. His men arrive in the morning. They silently and professionally install a new, heavy metal door with a massive lock in just a few hours. They hook up a compact camera to the ceiling in the hallway, aimed at the threshold. Kyungwon watches every step, checking the system's operation. He also brings food, containers of hot, homemade Korean food. He places them on her kitchen table. Eat, he says simply. You need your strength. Do you have a headache? A little, she replies. A large bruise has already formed on the back of her head. He nods, his gaze lingering on her face for a moment. In the few days it takes her to recover, Kyungwon changes. He stops hiding what was always there. He commands. Gennara sees his men constantly on duty in the courtyard. They're open. She sees people coming and going, all of whom treat him with marked respect. He receives them in his apartment and gives them orders. He comes to check on her. He stands at the threshold of the new door and says clearly, "They dared to enter my home, to touch the person under my protection. It was weakness. Whoever sent these people was mistaken. This is the end for them here." He doesn't explain the details. But from his tone, Gennara understands. Everything is prepared. The battle takes place at night. But it's not a fight. It's an operation. Gennara isn't sleeping. She's sitting in the darkness by the window. She sees the courtyard, seemingly empty, fill with movement. The figures of Gyeongwon's men emerge from the shadows. They're organized, silent. They occupy points, blocking all exits. Then 2 cars drive in, the same ones with the brazen guys. They find themselves trapped. People jump out, shouting, waving their arms. Kyungwon comes out of the entrance. He's alone. He walks toward the center of the courtyard. He's not in a hurry. He's wearing a dark jacket. He's saying something. Gennara can't hear the words, but she sees her opponents tense up. What happens next is incredibly fast. Gyeongwon's men close in. It's not a general melee. It's a precise, swift action. Each of the strangers is surrounded, neutralized, and led away to the approaching vans. The screams die down. Gyeongwon stands in the middle of the courtyard, watching. He is the center of this silent hurricane. He doesn't even raise his hand. 15 minutes later, the courtyard is empty again. The strangers' cars drive away. No trace, no noise. As if nothing had happened, only a tense silence and a sense that order has been restored. The next morning, he knocks on her new door. He looks tired but collected. He's holding a tablet. "May I?" he asks. She lets him in. He sits at the table, turns on his tablet, and turns it toward her. "But I don't have someone I can trust with the numbers. Real numbers. Someone who will look at all this with fresh eyes. Someone who has already seen the inside and knows the cost of a mistake." He pauses. "That person is you. You're needed here, not as a casual assistant, as a partner. You'll handle all the financial aspects. Legally, with an official salary, with all the paperwork, you'll build this side of the business from scratch. I'll take care of all the risks, the organization, the security. You'll be the number cruncher and the logic." He falls silent, letting her think it all over. He doesn't press. He offers. Clearly, precisely. Gennara looks at the diagrams on the tablet. They look professional. She looks at his face. It hides nothing anymore. She sees weariness, determination, and respect. He's not simply correcting a mistake. He's offering her a new path, a way out of the shadows, a chance to use her skills without fear, to build something real, under his protection, but in a different capacity. She looks at his serious face. She thinks of the broken door, of the fear, of those huge sums, and then she thinks of that clear diagram on the screen. It becomes different, focused, businesslike, communal. Kyungwon nods. He closes his tablet. "The first meeting with the lawyer and accountant I hired is in 3 days. They'll review all your documents for registration. You'll be listed as the CFO of the new company. Your salary will be transferred to your account. Everything is official." "And what about the old business?" Gennara asks cautiously. "It will be closed, gradually over the course of 6 months. People who are willing and able to work honestly will transfer to the new structure. The rest will be offered compensation for leaving. Security is provided during the transition period." He speaks of it as calmly as he would about fixing a door. For him, it's simply the next logical step. "Why?" she asks, unable to resist. "Why now? Because of what happened to me?" He looks at her for a few seconds. This is the last straw. I've been thinking about this for a long time. The risks are growing. Attention to such schemes is growing too. And the fact that they dared to enter my house, it showed that the old methods no longer work as they should. Everything needs to change. You gave us a reason to do it quickly. He stands up. Rest today. Tomorrow we'll start working with the current numbers to prepare for the meeting. After he leaves, Janera approaches the new door. She runs her palm over the cold metal. She feels a strange mixture of emotions. A sharp fear still lingers somewhere deep inside, an echo of that night. But something new is building on top of it, a nervous but powerful excitement. She's been given a chance not just to keep records, but to build. And this chance was born out of chaos and danger. The next morning, he isn't alone. He's with a man of about 40 in a formal suit, a lawyer. They sit at her kitchen table, and Kyungwon introduces him. Mr. Kim, our lawyer. He'll explain the structure of the new company and your legal responsibilities to you. The conversation lasts 2 hours. Janera asks questions, clarifies details. Kyungwon remains silent for most of the time, listening, only occasionally interjecting briefly or instructing the lawyer to clarify something. He looks at her, and his gaze betrays approval. She's not giving up. She's paying attention. After the lawyer leaves, Kyungwon lingers. Any questions? Not yet. Everything's clear. Good. Documents for new contracts will start arriving next week. The first task is to build an accounting system from scratch. You are fully responsible for this department. Hire people if necessary. I will provide the fund. He speaks to her as an equal. His tone is free of its previous detachment. It is the tone of a colleague. I can handle it, says Janera. I know, he replies. And for the first time, something resembling a slight, barely perceptible smile touches his eyes. Otherwise, I would not have offered. When he leaves, Janera returns to her laptop. She opens a blank file, the name of a new venture, and begins to work, not with fear, but with purpose. The walls of her apartment no longer feel like a trap. The new door is not just a barrier against threat, but a boundary between the past and the future. She looks at the diagram on the screen and feels how, for the first time in a long time, her life has not only value, but also meaning. Difficult, dangerous, but her own.